If you plan on being a Berserker or trying out the Berserker class in Chrono Odyssey, then this video is for you. Regardless of if you are a beginner or an expert when it comes to the Berserker, you are definitely going to be learning something from this video, and that's because I am taking a deep dive in everything you need to know in order to be successful in this class. This is a long video, so feel free to multitask as you watch this or jump down below to the specific section on what you're interested in. In this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive in each of the 3 different weapons that the Berserker specializes in and taking a closer look at each of the skills. We will not only do a deep dive in what those skills actually do, but I'm actually going to be testing out each one individually throughout the video, so you can pick and choose your favorite 4 out of those different skills for each weapon to create the perfect Berserker build for you. After we do that, we're going to take a closer look at some of the best practices with the Berserker based on the best perks for your weapons and gear to be the most efficient and effective in this class, as well as some of the top 4 consumables you can use to make sure that every time you set foot in in-depth battles that you'll be set up for success. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first weapon, which of course are the chain blades. The first skill I'm going to be looking at is the sweeping slash. Essentially, it's 2 consecutive crossing slashes that deal an initial amount of damage and also allows you to stack up on Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst is a very useful resource, well, I guess ability in this game as a Berserker, because it allows you to build stacks up to essentially keep yourself alive. So I'm going to go ahead and use this right now. It's effective in 1v1 battles just like this, as well as it's essentially considered an AoE skill as well. So if there's a large amount of mobs or a handful of players in front of you that you want to take down, this definitely is effective. Plus, it's a great way, once again, to build up those Bloodthirst stacks. Next up, let's look at Chain Strike, which essentially pulls an individual enemy towards you. As you can tell from the upgrades, there are a few additional add-ons there, but I want to just visually show you what it looks like. So as you can tell, there's a bit of a frosty approach to it, right? Some of these mobs are pretty low in level, so it's hard to tell the initial pull, but essentially what it does is dish off some small amount of damage, pulls the enemy a little bit closer. Personally, I think there are better options out there when it comes to Berserker skills, so I would not be too focused on that one, but let's go ahead and move forward and you can be the judge yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and take a closer look at some of these other abilities. I'm just going to quickly pick up the skill points and then we'll take a closer look at 2 of them. Those include the Fighting Spirit, which is essentially a shout, and then this slamming ability. But Fighting Spirit essentially reduces incoming damage, which is a perfect way to kind of start large-scaled 1v1 boss battles in my opinion. Plus it can also help you build up Bloodthirst stacks. Glacial Strike is essentially an AoE ability that dishes off a big burst of damage and also chills the enemies, which inflicts them with somewhat of a slow and also sets you up for additional skills down the road. If you max it out, you can actually get 2 back-to-back Glacial Strikes, which I'll demonstrate in just a second. So there is the shout right there, and here is the Glacial Strike. If you're fast enough, you can do them both back to back, just like that, which will definitely help you out when it comes to grinding levels or even taking down enemies. I do like the shout personally right before kind of entering large battles, because that overall kind of extra defense really does help you out. The next skill is called Chain Cleave, which is essentially 2 attacks in 1. And this one also grants some Bloodthirst, which boosts your health regen and also gives you an increase in overall attack. If you upgrade Chain Cleave, you can also have it inflict chill on enemies, which essentially slows their overall movement speed. And if you get 5 stacks of chill, the enemy actually freezes, where they basically get stunned in place and also gets inflicted some damage. We're also going to take a look at Chilling Strike, which is probably one of my favorite abilities when matching with that first skill I showcased, because if you get it fully upgraded, let me hover over real quick, first of all, inflicts stun on enemies that are chilled, which is just a great follow-up, but also it will consume all the stacks of Bloodthirst and give a huge stack of damage output. So if you add that all up, plus this extra explosive damage, it just dishes off tons and tons of damage on your target. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at what these actually look like while in combat. I'm going to go ahead and collect this, and let's see. Here's the first skill right here. You can see there's 2 slashes right there, and even when the enemy dies, you can see that it's frozen quite a bit. So let's take a closer look at this next one too. I'm going to move over here and we can take a closer look. So there's 1, 2, it's frozen again. Here is the second ability, which is more so an AoE skill, I would say, but it does have a short leap to it, as you can tell, and it's great for taking down large clumps of mobs. Okay, next up, let's just go ahead and grab some skill points here, and then we can move on to the last 2 skills for the chain blades. So what I want to highlight next is the Soaring Blade skill, which is a upward slash, inflicting a initial amount of damage and also inflicting chill. What it can also do once upgraded is consume the Bloodthirst stacks to add up overall rage. So again, it kind of builds off of that first skill that I highlighted, which is really why I kind of love that as kind of like a great opener as well. I'm also going to be highlighting the Steel Vortex, which is essentially another AoE ability, but this time it's an AoE ability that brings all the mobs nearby inward towards you. And take a look at those damage numbers. It is extremely high damage output, so it could be great based on what you're planning on doing or where you are. It also inflicts knockdown, so it can kind of help with overall crowd control if you're in a tight position and kind of need to jump out and just kind of reset. So let's go ahead and jump over into some actual gameplay to take a closer look at what this actually looks like. And what I like about Soaring Blades is the fact that you can actually have the cooldown for it reset if you get that third perk, which is very effective when just grinding mobs just like this. So I used it, killed it, and you can tell right away that I have the skill again. So once again, I can use it. And if you're just trying to grind some mobs and get some levels, it's extremely useful. As you can tell, I'm dishing off lots of damage, killing one and moving on to the next. Next up, after I kill this one, I want to kind of give you a good visual of this Vortex skill. And again, this is primarily a AoE skill, so you want to typically do this with at least 2 or more mobs. So let's get these 2 close to each other, and then I'm going to go ahead and use that. It deals some damage and pulls them in exactly as expected. So again, that could be pretty useful, especially if you're in a large clump of mobs, kind of like this that we're about to approach. Next up, let's take a closer look at some of the passives. You've got the Bloodthirst perk, which essentially allows you to pick up some additional Bloodthirst after a handful of basic attacks. The more you upgrade it, the less attacks you need to pick up those stacks. We also have Ruthless, which increases overall crit damage once you have max stacks of Bloodthirst, which, hey, Sweeping Slash, you do 1 or 2 of these, and you'll have max stacks, which, you know, crit damage is going to just be huge when it comes to overall just damage output. We also have the Scrapper passive, which increases the damage of basic attacks. As you level up that, it increases the overall damage up to 30%, which is very, very helpful because you will be dishing off a lot of basic attacks as you play the Berserker. We also have Hour of Vengeance. It essentially allows you to grant Bloodthirst upon switching to Chain Blades. I don't think this is needed, honestly, because Sweeping Slash will just give you those stacks of Bloodthirst really quick anyways, so I wouldn't stress too much about that passive personally. Next up, we have Lingering Power. This allows you to increase rage generation when you kind of use this Surging Force ability. If you hold right-click in combat, this is what kind of pushes out that special move. And again, that special move is different for each of the 3 weapons. You can also upgrade this perk with Bloodlust, which just allows you just to gain some Bloodthirst, or you can recover some HP, which I personally do think is pretty helpful, especially since, hey, you're melee, you're taking hits, it could just save you in a certain battle. Piercing Cold allows you to increase overall damage output towards chilled enemies. Again, a lot of these skills, especially these AoE ones, are inflicting chill or frost, which allows you just to dish off even more damage if you pick up that perk. So again, I really do recommend it. I've just had to kill that mob real quick, and let's take a closer look at this last perk, which is right down here. And again, you can keep upgrading that perk all the way up to 34% additional damage if they are chilled, which honestly is a huge amount of damage output if you do the math and add everything up together. But this last and final perk is called Unending Rage, and all it does is generate 15 rage as soon as you kill an enemy. If you're killing a bunch of enemies very, very quickly, I do recommend picking that up. But if it's more on like 1v1 or PvP, then I would not stress that much at all about that one. So what I'm showing now are essentially my favorite skills when it comes to the chain blades. And of course, I'm starting out with Sweeping Slash. For the most part, I start off almost every battle when it comes to combat with that skill, just because it builds up those initial stacks of Bloodthirst very, very quickly. I'm also picking up a Glacial Strike and trying to max that out as much as possible. And of course picking up some Piercing Cold just to make sure I'm dishing off as much damage as possible to enemies that have that chill effect. Also, I'm picking up Fighting Spirit. So I don't typically like upgrading Fighting Spirit all the way, but I do like having this ability just because it reduces 50% of overall damage. So again, I do like using this when it comes to kind of like 1v1 large scale boss battles, especially for those chrono gates. But if I'm not in those boss battles, I prefer using Steel Vortex. And that's primarily just because the overall damage output of Steel Vortex is insane. So many times I'll pick that up instead. But between those two skills, realistically, you can't go wrong. And again, it's important to note that Steel Vortex does knock back enemies, so I'm going to showcase that in some footage down the road too. But when it comes to overall passives, I am not really touching that one, honestly. I'm already getting Bloodthirst from Sweeping Slash very, very quickly, and probably getting upwards of 5 stacks almost instantly. I am picking up at least one stat though from Ruthless. As I level up my character, I will be picking up more of those stacks as well, because overall damage is what your best friend is as a Berserker. Hour of Vengeance, again, I am ignoring that one. Lingering Power, depending on the situation, I will sometimes pick that up just to pick up that HP restoration add-on. But again, it really depends on what you're going for. If you're focused on damage output, then once again, pick up Piercing Cold, because you are going to be dishing off lots of AoE skills that chill enemies. So overall damage output and just burst damage is essentially what you're going for when it comes to this build. What I like to do is Sweeping Slash and then move over to Chilling Strike, and then I'll go back to Sweeping Slash, and then I'll do Glacial Strike, and then back to Sweeping Slash, and essentially rinse and repeat. If you enjoy the video so far, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. I have a lot more guides, including a more advanced Berserker guide for you guys down the road, so make sure you don't miss it. Now let's move on to the next weapon, which are the Twin Axes, which is a ton of fun. The first skill is going to be the Slaughter skill, which allows you to essentially just dish off some quick damage. It can inflict knockback too, which is nice. It kind of crowd controls certain enemies. I like using this ability for single targets. But as you can tell too, it gains some additional benefits if you use the special move, which is Berserk, just to really get the most out of that ability. The other skill we're going to look at is Empower Axe. It greatly increases damage by upwards of 30%. If you upgrade it, it can also give you some health regen, as well as even reset the cooldown if you kill an enemy once it's active. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at these two. I'm going to kill this mob just to warm up, and then we'll take a look at this nade mob over here and take a look at the damage numbers right now. We're seeing some 1 and 2s there. We proc Empower Axe, use some basic attacks. That first one was almost 500. So you can definitely tell that the overall damage boost from Empower Axe is definitely worth it, and I like using it right before, bosses or dishing off big abilities. You can see the other skill, it's essentially 2 slashes right there and a very short cooldown, so you can rinse and repeat those and just burn down mobs very quickly. What's nice about this again is if Berserk is activated, the overall damage output and just cooldown and everything is so much faster. Next up, let's take a closer look at Axe Throw. So this is nice because as a Berserker, you're typically close to getting up close and personal, but Axe Throw allows you to attack from a distance. Plus, if it's upgraded, you can get 2 charges of it and even stun enemies if it actually lands. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at what this looks like too. And again, this one's a lot of fun in my opinion. I'm actually also going to pick up this Immortal skill. So this skill is going to be insane in PvP, right? Essentially, if you use this skill right before you die, it keeps you alive. It prevents you from falling. There's also some upgrades to kind of increase the overall cooldown. As you can tell, it's 150 seconds. So if you fully upgrade it, you actually get 20% health once it expires. So again, you will die, and then at the end of it, you will actually pick up 20% health. There's the stun right there from throwing the axe, which is very, very helpful. We're going to go ahead and just let this guy hit us now too. I'm going to proc this kind of immortal skill just to kind of show you guys how exactly it works. So right before you die, you proc it, and then there you go. I should be dead right now, but I'm not. I can continue the fight, and I have upwards of 14 seconds to stay alive. But keep note that once that time expires, you can get killed. And if you have bleeds on you, like I did right here, take a few steps, and guess what? You're going to die anyways. Next up, let's take a closer look at the Cleave ability. This is kind of a similar ability as that first skill we looked at, but it actually gives a debuff to the opponent by decreasing their defense. If you upgrade it, you can dish off more damage if you attack a bleeding enemy with that skill. And if we fully upgrade it, you can get an additional use of it. So again, dishing off tons and tons of skills very, very fast, debuffing enemies. That's really what the twin axes are about. We're also going to take a look at this Clobber ability. I actually am a big fan of this just because if you upgrade it to its second stage, you can recover 20% health. So again, you can swap over the twin axes, use Clobber if you have to, and gain some health. Fully upgrade it and you can just boost up the overall damage output. And again, we'll get a closer look at what this actually looks like once we actually get into some gameplay. It's also nice too because Clobber inflicts bleeding, which just adds more damage output to Cleave. So these two kind of come hand to hand and can work pretty well against a single target with twin axes. So let's go ahead and find an opponent so we can take a closer look at what these actually have to offer. So here we go. We're going to go back to our skeleton friends and let's just warm up a little bit, do some attacks. And right here, you can see right there, there's the slash. Very, very easy to use. Again, more so focused on single targets, but you can use it for AoE if you want to. But again, they have to be pretty close. So now that we looked at this first one, let's look at the next one. Let's attack this guy here. And actually, let's use it on this guy right here. Right there's the attack. You can see he jumps back. There's a knockback. And he has the bleeding, right? We inflicted bleeding. We're just going to let him die so you guys kind of see that the overall ticking of the bleed damage was enough to take him down. So let's go ahead and jump back to our twin axes. We can go ahead and reset these and then take a closer look at the last two skills and then jump over to the passives. So I'm going to just grab some of these so I can unlock the next two skills. We've got the headbutt skill, and then I'm going to upgrade this quite a bit. And then we're also going to look at the relentless swing. I'm just going to max these out all we can, and then we'll take a closer look at what these actually do. So headbutt is pretty cool because you can actually just headbutt an enemy, deal some damage, inflict knockback, and actually reduce the attack output by 25%. So this is great Groups love it when a Berserker's on their team just because they can debuff not only defense, but also the enemy's attack with this ability. If we take a look at Relentless Rush down here, you can see that this is basically a group of 3 attacks into one, and it also inflicts knockback. If you do have Berserk active, it just boosts the damage like crazy, over 500%, which is probably the most percentage of damage across all attacks. Plus, if you attack 3 times on a bleeding enemy with this skill, then it inflicts bleed, and you ignore the enemy defense. This skill is honestly insane. I'm going to show you how insane it is by looking at some exact numbers because, hey, numbers don't lie. So right there's the headbutt. You can see he's got the debuff, and it's kind of a funny animation too. It actually pushes them back quite a bit. And here's the other ability here too. It's 3 attacks, and that third one really is kind of like an AoE, slam the ground and dish off some damage. So as I was testing this, I realized that this open world boss was getting attacked. So I figured, hey, let's jump into the opportunity and really test out the damage output for that one insane 500% damage, 3 attack and 1 type of skill. So I'm going to go ahead and just start doing some fighting here. I'm actually going to proc Berserk and then use that ability to see how much damage it does. And look at that. Almost 3,200 damage. Here's the screenshot. I landed a crit for 3,174 damage. And honestly, this character has kind of mediocre gear at the moment of this recording. So again, the overall damage output could be insane with the twin axes. Next up, let's take a look at the passives. The first one is called Unrelenting Spirit. Essentially, it increases your overall attack when your HP is below half. Which, hey, everyone likes attack, especially if you're dishing off major crits like that. The next one is Overflowing Force. It increases movement speed when your stamina is full, which is just very, very useful, especially if you're running around exploring. There's also Blood Capture, which inflicts bleed upon landing a critical hit. Personally, I'm a huge fan of this. If you can dish off high damage output as well as bleed damage, it's a win-win across the board, and you're going to be melting bosses left and right. Next up, you have Colossus, which upon switching to these twin axes, it generates rage as well as recovers some stamina. So again, it depends on how you want to use this, but there is a 30-second cooldown, so you can't just swap back and forth. There's Relentless Hunter. Essentially, while Berserk is active, basic attacks trigger a dash attack. So this is nice if you're just kind of mindlessly grinding and leveling some things up. Plus, there are some other upgrades like increasing overall HP consumption in exchange for higher damage output when Berserk is activated. Okay, and these last 2 passives are somewhat similar. The first one increases crit rate once your HP is at 30%, and the other one allows you to recover HP once your HP is below 40%. So it's a great way to just generate some health as well and use twin axes as a way to stay alive. One thing I thought was pretty interesting is that there's a ton of different passives and skills that increase your movement speed. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pick up a handful of these right here, and then do a quick test to kind of show you guys how crazy twin axes can really be when it comes to movement speed. So here's a quick test, right? I'm going to proc Berserk and I'm going to start running. Take a look at how fast I am running right now. I think I'm honestly faster than most mounts. My double jump basically leaps me further than anything I've seen before. This mob is trying to chase me, and you can just backpedal and do circles around him. But remember, with great speed comes great responsibility. You guys can jump around, kill mobs extremely quick, but if you just kind of lose control of your speed, you can of course find yourself in a troublesome situation. For example, even though you have a lot of speed, fall damage is still a thing, and yeah, huge jump off a cliff equals death. But yeah, when it comes to twin axes, here's a closer look at what I like to do. I like to proc and power axe, use a clobber, and then as you can tell, I'm using clobber basically as a way to dish off damage and also recover health if I need to. I then move over to cleave, which basically debuffs the enemy. and also just increases the damage if they're already bleeding, which is great. So again, I'm just trying to dish off as many skills as possible with the Twin Axe, and then I'll end it with the Relentless Swing, which once again, that's the insane kind of trio of attacks where that last one dealt that 3200 crit attack. So again, tons and tons of damage that can be done here. I think Twin Axes are great options for the Chrono Gate bosses, as well as just single target PvP even. There's so much that you can do here, and I'm just kind of showing some of the most sought after perks as well. Realistically, Twin Axes is great for single target damage as well as debuffing enemies, just to allow you to take down large scale bosses a little bit easier, even in group play combat. So again, that covers up Twin Axes, so let's move on to the next one. Last but certainly not least, we have the Battle Axe. And the first skill we're going to take a look at is called Whirlwind, which is by far my favorite skill, honestly, available for the Battle Axe, and you'll quickly see why. We'll also be taking a look at Raging Axe, which is kind of a follow-up to Whirlwind. And let's just take a quick look. Whirlwind essentially allows you to spin up to 20 times and dishes off tons and tons of damage. Each spin consumes your rage, but you can actually reactivate it as soon as it's done with. As long as you have rage, you can proc Whirlwind. There's a few upgrades available too, and essentially it ends with a major strike that allows you to then reset it if you wanted to. Also, Whirlwind can inflict bleed upon a hit, which just adds everything up. Raging Axe is kind of a follow-up because it generates up to 5 rage per second based on the number of Whirlwind stacks you get. So if there's 5 stacks, that's 5 rage. It just all kind of works together in a kind of a happy kind of duo when it comes to skills. As you can tell too, there's a few upgrades. I'm just going to jump over here and wait for this dragon to spawn because it has enough health to really kind of showcase the power of Whirlwind as well as that follow-up ability. So here comes the dragon. It spawned. We're going to run up and do some attacks. Remember, you want that yellow bar to be as full as possible when doing Whirlwind. Ideally, you want to wait until it's completely full. That allows you to hit all 20 spins, but here I kind of used it halfway. As soon as your Whirlwind is finished, I like to use that second skill that we talked about just to get the most of that rage. So you can see my rage is already built up pretty quickly. Half of that, if not more, came from that ability, and it allows me to just start spinning more. I'm going to continue to spin until my rage is down or I disrupt it. Right there, I disrupted it. And again, that cooldown is always going to be there as long as I have rage, which is great. You can truly have a spin to win class when it comes to the Berserker, and it's just a ton of fun. So now that we've got Whirlwind behind us, let's go ahead and jump into the next 2 skills. This one includes, let me just grab a few of these perks real quick. We're going to take a look at Thunder Strike. So we've got some kind of like a Thor-like build, as well as Unyielding Strike. So we're going to take a closer look at what these are. Thunderstruck is essentially what you thought it would be in a way. It allows you to block an attack and then counter it with a bunch of lightning. It also inflicts knockback, and it honestly is a pretty cool visual. If you land the final attack on it, you can recover some health as well, and that final upgrade there can just help with the overall cooldown times. Unyielding Strike is kind of like that follow-up attack to Whirlwind, except it allows you to gain super armor, and the damage of it increases with the number of Whirlwind stacks. So in a perfect world, I would basically use Whirlwind and then a fully upgraded Unyielding Strike and dish off tons and tons of damage. The one downside is that there is a 50-second cooldown, so it's not like you can just rinse and repeat Unyielding Strike after the Whirlwinds, but hey, you can just stock up and push them out while you can. Here's a closer look at that first one, which allows you to really counterattack an enemy's attack. You just have to make sure that you time it perfectly, right? And then here's a closer look at the other one. It's kind of like a mini animation even, but as you can tell, it dishes off tons and tons of damage. Here's another quick visual just to kind of show you guys how that counterattack skill works. I'm gonna just wait until he swings. Bam, it kind of blocks the attack, and then counters it back towards them. Next up, let's take a closer look at the Sever skill, which allows you to slam the ground and also inflict bleed. This is a very nice AoE skill, and when it's fully upgraded, it deals tons of damage and increases the radius. You also can get a shield equal to 15% of your health, and if it's fully upgraded, you can inflict multiple stacks of bleed. So again, this is kind of like a AoE enjoyer's Christmas, right? We also have the Blood Fuel skill, which is super helpful. You can give yourself essentially a shield equal to 35% of your max HP. And this lasts for upwards of 10 seconds. But take a look at that consumption over in the lower left corner. The time is 20 seconds and it costs you 15% of your own health. So keep that in mind too. But if you have it fully upgraded, you get some additional perks, and it even explodes and dishes off some damage to enemies nearby, which is super cool. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at what these actually look like. There's the first skill. You can see I attacked both of them there. This is the shield that I was talking about too. There's a nice visual of it. You can see that first skill actually dealt some bleed damage. Here it is again, and yeah, easy peasy lemon squeezy. The battle axe has a lot of power behind it. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the last two skills. That includes the Executioner's Call, which allows you to actually physically throw the axe, which is pretty cool, and it also inflicts a taunt. So if you actually make contact with it and you have this skill upgraded, it can also increase the overall attack for yourself, and you can just boost up the overall damage input as well, and even reset the cooldown if it is fully upgraded. And last but not least, we have the Spinning Cleave. This allows you to spin quite a bit, dish some damage, even inflict some knockback, and if you land that final strike, you can actually pick up some super armor and help with your overall defense too. If the enemy is affected by bleed, you can dish off some more damage, and if it's fully upgraded, you can even stun the enemies too. So there's a lot of crowd control when it comes to battle axe too. So take a look at the distance of me throwing this axe. It actually has some pretty good distance, right? It made contact. You can see the red skins debuffs on the enemy, and then I've got that physical spin, which is also pretty cool. But keep in mind too, it's like a forward spin, so you do want to make sure you keep a close look at it. When it comes to passives, we've got the Steady Stance. This allows you to basically gain superpower whenever you use, super armor whenever you use a skill, just to help your overall survivability. You've got Tenacity. When your health is below 20%, you gain a shield of max HP. Again, the Battle Axe has the combination of great AoE skills, but also survivability. It is technically considered the tank choice for the Berserker, so if you want to be tankier, this is your choice, right? Battle Ready allows you to reduce incoming damage by a certain percentage as well every time you use a skill. Again, another very tanky passive. You've got Taunting Shift. Every time you switch to the Battle Axe, you can taunt enemies nearby, which is great if you're in a team and you want to make sure you protect your squishy teammates, right? Next up, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Bloody Retaliation perk. This allows you to actually inflict bleed when you block an attack. Super helpful, right? And there's two upgrade options: Preemptive Defense and then also Resilient Wrath. This allows you to actually increase attack by 30% on a block too. So I do recommend picking those two up. Just block before you actually dish off some damage, get some bleeds, and boost up your attack. You also have Perfect Balance, which allows you to inflict bleed after landing 20 hits. And it also gives you a health shield. So this is great for those large scale bosses, those open world bosses, even those chrono bosses. You also have this last perk, which allows you to recover 10 stamina for a small chance when attacking. So again, super helpful. When it comes to the skills that I like, I actually pick up all of Whirlwind right there. I also like to pick up these two attacks, Raging Axe, which allows me to pick up tons of rage just simply by having all those whirlwind stacks, right? And then also I like having Unyielding Strike. So typically what I'll do is use Whirlwind, use one of those two, Whirlwind again, jump back to the other one. I also like picking up Blood Veil. It's just a nice safety net. It makes me feel safe too whenever things are a little bit tricky. And if you have it fully upgraded, you get a 20% HP buff once it's expired as well. So again, just really focusing on overall damage output. I typically use Whirlwind and then bounce between those two abilities and just get as much damage as possible. Now let's talk about gear and perks, right? So in the advanced guide that's coming soon, I'll get a little bit more in depth for it. But for weapons, I like using the Destroyer perk. It's just a base increase of 1.6% or higher to overall damage. You can't go wrong. I also like the, you can see there's PvP related perks too. So depending on if you're PvP oriented, you could go PvP or not. The next perk I want to call out is this one called Relentless. It allows you to deal some additional damage over time. Add that with your bleeds and you are really burning down enemies very, very quickly. The next perk I want to call out is this one right here. It allows you to pick up HP recovery. Sometimes when you're in this Berserker melee build, you're going to just need to kite the enemy and regain health. So this perk actually helps you do just that. And again, it's kind of a safety net. It's just a nice to have, especially when you're taking down those chrono gates. These jewelry perks are all super great too. You can see this one actually provides you with a huge boost of attack if your HP drops at a certain level. Honestly, these attack buffs with all these passives and abilities can just get insane. I also like this one where, once again, it allows you to damage over time after inflicting an attack. And all of these bleeds stack on top of each other and just really gets the most out of your abilities. The last perk I want to call out, actually there's two more. This one, Vatruda Jewel. It essentially is like an immortality skill, except as a perk. If you die, you essentially get invulnerability, just like that one ability for the Twin Axe. Super helpful. Again, it's another safety net and will make your life a lot easier, especially when taking down bosses. And last but not least, I like picking up Frontier Strength. It allows you to increase your overall attack by 17 or higher based on the quality of your gear. Again, all of these are super great, but use your best judgment. I also want to call out that there's a lot of consumables, right? In the lower left corner, you can see that there's a specific timer based on the type of consumable I am using. I can have a health potion as well as any piece of food as different forms of getting health restoration. Plus, I can pick up some of these different potions that can either give me a defense boost or an attack boost. However, it is important to note that these both share the same cooldown. So if you're trying to be in a battle with a little bit more of a punch, make sure you proc that offensive one or use the defense for some extra safety. One thing I do think is pretty interesting too is that you have a handful of items like these nectars, right, that give you a certain buff for upwards of 30 minutes or higher. So if you use this and jump out, and actually you'll see the temporary buff, which is just a few seconds, and then the 30-minute buff right next to it. What's cool is that if you use different types of nectars or consumables, many of them will actually stack. You can see that that 30-minute timer is set up for those two, and I can just keep going. I can even go ahead and consume this hearty porridge, and then you'll see, once again, there's that temporary one that's a few seconds for some health regen, and then also that 30-minute timer. And I can just keep going, honestly. As long as they're separate and are not directly overlapping with one another, they will stack, so you can really set yourself up for success. And that covers it. If you made it this far in the video, please comment below and let me know. I'd love to personally thank you. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing. Again, I do have an advanced Berserker guide coming soon with a lot more detailed information in regards to best in slot Berserker builds. So stay tuned for that and subscribe if you're interested. Thanks again, and I'll catch you guys later.